she decided that it would be cool to teach you VFX a little bit, which once again gives you a heads up into 375 next semester. And then, so, you're going to learn about blood splatter and other cool shit.
To start the class, just because I know I'm going to be messing up today, and please bear with me. I'm running on like 3 hours of sleep. I brought cheesy rolls for all of you. I have enough for one for everyone right now, if you just want to take it and pass it around. There's so many flavors. But as Erin said, I'm going over visual effects today. You will be going over this in 375. You'll have, if it's still the same when you take it, when I did, 3 separate assignments to explore the particle system in Unity, the VFX graph, and in that you can also discover the Unity shader graph to coincide with that. But you'll also be playing with a player's bone structure visual effects, which you'll see what I did. But I'm teaching that now essentially to give you more time to think about what you want in your individual game and what you want to start doing then, because that's something I wished I had learned sooner. Just to start, visual effects are a way to enhance the game's atmosphere, immersion, and visual appeal, and you can do this in so many different ways, such as using particle effects, environmental effects, light effects, explosions, fluid and cloth simulation, motion blur, and there's so much more beyond this. If you just take a deep dive, you can more than likely do anything that you want. Some of these include smoke, fire, sparks. Some of those we'll be touching on today. It's the same thing with rain, which we'll be doing meteor showers, which can then in turn be used as a rain or however you want to change that. You can play with shadows, reflections, more explosions, kind of also what we'll be touching on today. Water, lava splashes, and flag wavings, and I haven't touched this one yet, but I've heard it's possible you can blur with speed somehow with visual effects. And so here, just to kind of show you different examples of visual effects, I have included these. I don't know. And just as a couple different examples of different styles of visual effects. Short. These are more of what you'll be dealing with. The start of this is Houdini, the second part of this is Unity. as you can tell based off of those, you really have a limitless possibility of what you can do. From what that last video showed, it's really to inspire you to do something with your boss fight. You don't have to. There's a lot of tutorials out there, which you'll see included at the end of my slideshow, that you can follow. In most of my personal VFX adventures, it took me maybe an hour or less to implement these in my game, and most of these I didn't have to touch code for. There's a way to do that if you want something simple, if you want to just start your exploration, please take a look into it. That being said, some of the ones that I did for my individual game, I included some fireflies, some rain, and water ripples. It was something that I really enjoyed, something that fit my frog environment and swamp type deal, which I actually have a video of. Oh, this was the first design. But as you can tell, that plane is kind of where my particles come from for the rain. And then based upon the collisions, there's little water droplets. You can kind of see when I zoom in. And then the fireflies were my favorite creation, just because you can also limit the size of which you do it. So I did fireflies in a jar as well as fireflies in the environment, which I thought was really fun. Another one that we did that Dodie had us do was messing with shields. It doesn't have to be a spherical shield. You can mess with the shape, whether you want just a plain or more like a halo style shield. All of those are possible. These are ones that I just chose. I really like this effect too, because it makes it look like it's breathing. You can change the emission light off of it, so it's, I keep moving over it, or is a little brighter when it glows. And then my favorite one yet that I've probably created is the stink cloud. So if you have a really dirty player or something you want to show off like that, you can totally do that. And it just follows the player. This is the one that I did based off of the bone structure of the body, which Dodie will go over if you don't want to start diving into that right now. But as you can tell, it collects as the person stands, but it eventually disappears. And my favorite quote that kind of goes with the idea of all of this is from Tadashi Hamada, Big Hero 6. Shake things up, use that big brain of yours to think your way out. Look for a new angle. Because one VFX can turn into 10 different ones just by changing 2 or 3 simple things. Okay. Unity has 2 really big different types of visual effects systems. One of them is the visual effects graph. This one uses the GPU for particle logic, which means you can use a lot more particles. That being said, you can render millions of particles at once. This allows for more complex systems. However, the physics for these are based on very simple primitives, and there's a couple systems in Unity that you can use, but again, very basic. Whereas for particle systems, it uses CPU on your computer. It only generates thousands of particles. It's a simpler type system, but it does have underlying physics that you can use for collisions and whatnot with your characters. All up to you which one you choose. I think I've seen more of the particle systems used in games, but today we are touching on the VFX graph just with a couple of the visual effects that I thought you could use in your game, or boss fight as well. These are 2 explosions that were created, one with the VFX graph, one with the particle system. As you can tell, they're pretty similar. Part of it is the emission, some of the clouds, but if you're really not that picky and just want an explosion, either would work. It's whatever you prefer. That being said, the Unity shader graph can coincide with some of these systems. It's more often than not, you'll see it with the particle system to help with looks. It can be used on its own for like visual screen overlays, which we won't be touching on today, just solely using the shader graph, but I know I've seen a couple tutorials on that. If you just want to stick with that, totally fine too. As a description from Unity, the shader graph is a tool that enables you to build shaders visually. Instead of writing code, you can create and connect nodes in a graph framework. Shader graphs give an instant feedback that reflects your changes, and it's simple enough for users who are new to shader creations. That is something that's really, really nice, is even as I was building the tutorial yesterday, the second one, as soon as you save, you can see the changes. You can see what you like, what you don't like. You can revert it immediately rather than having to wait on seeing the end result. With that being said, you can do so much with the shader graph. You can alter the surface appearance, warp and animate UVs. There's so much more beyond what's on this slide. You just got to take a deep dive into it. As for today's lecture, we are going to be going over two different types of VFX, and the blood splatter effect will utilize the shader in Unity. The first one we'll be going over is a blood splatter effect. You can use this when an enemy gets damaged or wounded. The player has some blood ability, whether you want them to have a power or something like that. You can make something with acid just by simply changing the color, the flow, or the number of particles you want. This is another great way to create water or lava splashes, fluid splashes, anything like that, or getting creative. As I said, this one will be using the Unity's VFX graph and shader, and if you want to see a more in-depth tutorial visually, I've got one down here for you. The second one we'll be going over is the meteor rain effect. This one you can use when the boss gets angry or has a super attack. It's actually a really cool effect. The environment is rainy or has a meteor shower. You can remove the sparks that we'll be adding and just change the color and remove the trails as well, unless you want that. Or if a ceiling is leaking slowly with some sort of water effect, you just have to slow down the particle rate, which we will be creating variables for. Easy change. Again, getting creative. This one, I didn't change that, uses the Unity VFX, not the shader graph. Like the other one, I have a visual tutorial for this if you want to go over that as well. But as to start with the blood VFX, you will need to open Unity. For this one, I'm using Unity version 2022.3.5. That was the latest version I downloaded in Lux, actually when I took this class last year. Haven't updated since. I used my particle VFX in that one, and it should work fine. I highly recommend using more up-to-date versions, not like saying that 2020 or later. Some of the blocks that we'll be using might not be in there or might be different. You should still be able to find the same blocks, the nodes that we'll be using, or you might need to find a similar route. Like I'll explain what I had to do for one of them today. That being said, when you open Unity, not that one. Oh, actually I should probably show this first. This is the meteor effect we will be creating today. As you can tell, there's sparks, there's trails. You can change it to your liking. I made it more elongated, but to kind of show you what it'll look like. This one uses a lot of the particle systems. We will be going step by step, oh my gosh, over this. But as you can tell, most of it's the same structure. It starts the event, it initializes the particle, and then it has, I forget what that one was, it updates the particle. There's some of them that have like the output particle. You don't need to worry too much about that. We'll go over it when we need to. And then as for the blood, you can either do this in a looping system. Oh my God, I need to touch something else. What is going on? Anyways. And there's blood splatter on the ground. You don't have to have that. That's just another system I used. Or you can just have it as a blood burst. So if one of your enemies gets damaged, and you just want them to squirt out temporarily, that totally works too. If this will play. Why is it this? We'll get to that later. But as you can tell, we create all of these variables that are preset. You can change them in here or in the inspector when you have it selected. If it will work, by God. But with this, oh my God. Very sorry. This is, what is happening? You can also make prefabs out of these. So you can reuse them multiple times. I just have it here for one, and then most of them are in my VFX. That being said, we are going to open up a new Unity file. Right here is where you need a different version than what you're used to if you haven't already touched visual effects. You're going to need this high definition 3D. This is what will allow for better visual effects. You may need to download it. It might take a little bit of time. Please let me know if you need time. It should just appear in your window with like a little cloud, like here, this high definition 3D. It should be SRP. Essentially, yeah. It's mostly for the visuals, just to help render it better. I have built it in just the regular 3D environment. My computer wanted to kill itself. I mean, it still does, but it handles it a little bit better. Rename your project to whatever you would like. Does anyone need more time downloading? I'm taking it as a no. Okay. And create the project. This might take a minute. I'm very sorry. There will be two other things that you do need, at least for this first one. It will, if you don't already have it, it will require you to download it again. These other two shouldn't take too long. They're from the package manager in Unity. They should already be as options in your package manager window. You just need to get them on your computer, which I can show you exactly where once this loads. It will just be the visual effects graph and the shader graph. Before we start building anything, we will go locate those two. Once this, oh God. Okay. You need to go to Window, Package Manager. It'll open up this handy dandy window. You need to be in Packages in the Unity registry. You'll scroll down to, where is it? The shader graph. Oh, perfect. I need it here. You'll install it. It shouldn't take too long. And then you'll also need, which I think it's already in the SRP files. I could be wrong. You should already have the visual effects downloaded. Very sorry if I am wrong. And as you'll see, you'll have this little green check mark indicating it's there, and it no longer says install. And then as for the where is it? Visual effects graph, oh, it is installed. You'll need to install that one as well. And then we are going to be doing one other thing with that visual effects. We need to turn on experimental blocks. It's just a way to get access to more blocks that will allow you to do different types of effects. It shouldn't mess with your computer. I haven't had that issue. I haven't heard of that issue. Please let me know if you run into anything. That being said, you need to go to Edit, Preferences, go down to the visual effects, and make sure that this experimental blocks operators and blocks is turned on. And then once that is done, you are all set to continue to the tutorial. We are going to be creating an empty game object. Please let me know if I'm going too fast. I will slow down. Okay, then I will. Okay. I will give you a second. Please let me know when you are ready.
I think if the projects were actually open, then you're going at a good pace for us to like.
Totally fine.
What do we need to download from the registry?
It is the, hold on, let me pull it up. And the Unity shader. Hold on, where is it? Holy cow, I this visual effects graph, I'll keep going between them, and the, I think it's on a, where did it go? Ah, shader graph. I forgot it's not listed as Unity shader.
VFX graph.
Yeah, visual effects graph.
Player like jumps, it like floats up, and all the players that I have, I just don't have player dance for those skills that I have that, I have the prefab flying, so I spawn one time prefab on one side, the other side is spread out instead of one spawn points. And then there's triggers for telling how many are in. It's not happening. I'm trying to figure out Unity input system, like the document, I'm trying to look at the document, but it's not.
Nick's just a little set it right now.
I want something to have a picture, and I had like 20 minutes. Like barely could run on the computer and forgot to build a project ahead of time. So 12 of my 20 minutes was taken up just loading an initial Unity. So you're good.
Perfect. Perfect.
What did you say we have to turn on again?
You'll go to edit preferences, visual effects, and it'll be the experimental operators blocks.
Thank you.
Why would you have player actions and that is not with the that's not the end.
I forget if I just doesn't have this.
So I have here.
Well, you're the wizard.
All the same. So everyone's at the same.
I'm just trying to figure out your magic spells here, okay? It's not working.
I don't know if you saw. I did have. Not that one. Not that one. Not that one.
It's true.
Hold on, I'm getting to it.
I mean, I didn't say last
I had
night
this.
that,
I had break building. I didn't know if they
Technology.
wanted to stop between your houses. Figured it'd be a perfect cutout time, especially if it's going to take that. Okay.
Who's still waiting for stuff to load? Cut.
I'm trying to access this right here, the Delta mouse. So logically,
You're still using 0.5.
It's the one my VR game is in, so I haven't really changed. I also haven't really built a new project since last year. I've kind of just been working or like looking at previous ones, seeing if there's any way I can mod it. So. The shader
graphic visual effects graphic.
Mhm. I'm gonna write it over here.
Instead of writing this book.
You read it so much better than not doing shit from scratch.
This goes lumpy.
No, I'm not meaning you. I'm meaning you. Because I hate you. Because it sucks.
It's the royal you.
Terrible.
I understand.
Whoever wrote it should stub their toe.
Right. Does everyone have the shader graph downloaded? Okay.
If you don't have the shader graph downloaded, you need to have the visual effects one downloaded.
Sorry.
Dang it.
It was the experimental, like, operators and blocks
Yep.
to turn on guys.
Mm-hmm.
I should charge my phone. Apparently didn't charge last night.
No.
But we started doing
Yes.
Well, it worked.
You like how you can't even see the pictures?
Maybe a little too red.
They're so
I
tiny.
saw you. I don't know how she's gonna use some of these images, but you know, whatever.
I'm really more concerned about the bigger ones because, like, the smaller ones were there just to make sure it looked
My
the
Cowboys
same,
Beyblade.
relatively the same size, shape.
You're saying this like
I should
a
probably
bad
pull up
thing.
the slideshow.
It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. I have to think that the true question is, does it work?
Oh no.
No, it's not. It wasn't even good.
I just got a text from my brother that they're probably gonna be like absolutely getting induced Saturday, but they're or Friday. Friday night, but they're gonna be in the hospital till like Sunday morning, which is expected. But my dad and I are also only going Saturday and Sunday, so we'll see how that goes.
At least you could do the like going up to the window. Introduce them.
Exactly.
Show us the baby. Yeah, we
Oh, I
had
did that wrong.
we had Cat in the hospital, which was not experience. And then we did a birth center.
You want to switch back to you, Mark?
Yeah, so it's just like midwives. They do it all.
Is it just in
Connected
your
to the
backpack?
hospital, so anything like
Just constantly getting more and more fleshed out.
Yeah.
Until the day you finally decide to leave.
But that was a better experience.
Yes, we booked in a bed, like a regular king size bed. Always fill it in a bathtub, water do, everything was there.
I didn't know that was an option.
Audrey, I didn't have a slight issue.
It's out of pocket. It wasn't too bad. It was worth it.
You should not
Because then we just,
go away.
as long as everything was fine, we laid there for like 3-4 hours after Ashley's born, got a little sleep. They woke us up with a breakfast, and then kicked us out and kicked our ass home.
Huh.
Which was much nicer than the nurses coming in every once in a while and trying to constantly ponderate.
Yeah, that's fair.
You shouldn't be doing.
Alright, where are we at? Shader graph, who's done? Visual effects graph as well. Close enough. You got it.
Going forward?
Yep.
Okay. We are going to continue on. Let me know if you need me to restate anything. More than happy to, or go back. I think we got plenty of time. First and foremost, we are going to create an empty game object. We're going to rename it VFX Blood Loop. We are also going to be creating a burst. That's why we're naming it Loop. We are going to then create a cube. You don't need to move the cube in any particular way. You can just leave it where it spawns. I'm going to make mine taller, just so it's like the size. Oh, not renaming it. Oh, God. Sorry. That was not meant to happen. Just so it like resembles the height of a being. You don't need to do that. But I will. You are going to select your empty game object, go into the transform, and reset it. Make sure it's all 0, 0, 0, and the scale is 1, 1, 1. We're then going to move it to the edge of the cube and most of the way up. As if it's in like the mouth area of whatever this is. The next thing we're going to go do is go into our assets folder, create a new folder, and rename it VFX. This is where we're going to be holding all of our VFX graphs. Go into this folder, right click, go to create, find the visual effects. Mine's more towards the bottom. In that opening, go to visual effects graph. We're going to rename this VFX graph underscore blood. Yep. Right click, create. Did you get your visual effects graph downloaded in the Unity registry? Do you wanna... Okay. Everyone ready to move on? Taking that as yes. We're then going to take this VFX graph underscore blood and drag it onto our VFX graph blood loop, the empty game object. So it's now a child of it. With this child selected, we're going to go back to the transform and reset it. Assuming everyone's done. with this VFX graph blood selected, go to the inspector. To open the VFX graph, we are going to find this asset template, find this edit button, and double click it. If you want to see how it changes your in-scene, take the window and dock it by your inspector. That way you can see what you are changing actively. A little handy dandy key. So first, to explain the visual effect kind of layout, is this little window right here allows you to create variables to set, so you don't have to keep changing it in the system. There's booleans, floats, vector threes. That's mostly what we'll be dealing with today. I actually don't know if we're touching even a boolean. We're dealing with floats, vector threes, and I think a texture 2D, and that's about it. But there's so many different options here to allow you to change that. I'm not sure. I think so. I think it's possible. Yeah. Another handy dandy hotkey is pressing F. If you ever say lose it, press F. You'll find it. I've done that way too many times. No matter where you are, it'll relocate it. It's very nice. As for the next one, we are going to select this spawn node. And to create a new node, you hit spacebar. And we're going to search for single burst. There should only be one option, at least that's what it shows on my end. It'll be this one right here. You're going to select it. It'll spawn this new node right underneath. You can leave it there. You don't need to touch it or move it. The next thing we're going to do is change this count from 0 to 16. It should be spawning something. Probably. No, it's fine. It should be showing particles. I don't know why my system's not, but it might just be mine. Because it should be on right here. It should be showing in scene. I don't know why it's not. Because it should just be showing like little time particles. Don't do what I'm doing right now. I'm just testing something out. Where is it? Because I didn't have this issue last night. No, it's not. Okay. Are the particles spawning for you guys? It should be like little circles with like a red and green tick. Okay. I'm just going to continue then. Hopefully something happens on my end, but I'll be taking you step by step. It should be showing active changes on your end. If you disable this constant spawn rate, you should see a slight difference in how many particles spawn. If you just uncheck it and check it. We're still going to need it on, so don't turn it off. It's just to kind of show you the difference. On this left-hand side, this VFX blood, we are going to be adding a boolean. Oh, no, we are using boolean today. Sorry. And we're going to rename it loop. This way, we'll be able to tell if or when we want the blood to loop. This is how we'll be changing it from a blood loop to a blood burst. A boolean. You're going to press this plus. Oh, loop. And you're going to make sure the value is checked, so it's true. bring this to the side. And we're going to then take that new variable we just created and drag it into our window. Drag it somewhere near spawn system. We're going to be creating a couple nodes off of it, but it should be there active. You're going to drag where this little purple circle is when it highlights. You're going to select that, drag off of it, unclick it, and it should pop up this little window, a little search bar. You're going to search for branch. Should only be one, at least that's what it shows on my end, and select it. Under what? Oh, I see. Yeah, pretty much. We're then going to create a float, so we're going to go back to this VFX blood variable window, press plus, and locate the float. And we're going to rename this to rate. Make sure to open that drop down and change this default value to 32. That's going to be the spawn rate that we're using. We're then going to drag this variable into our window right next to or under loop and connect this rate output to the true branch, or the input for branch, the true variable. Now it's going to get a little funky. We're going to select this branch, Control C, Control V, and make it appear right under the other one. We're going to connect this loop to the branch under the predicate. And we're going to turn this rate into false. It's very similar. This is just it's setting up the same, so when it does the burst, the one splatter, it'll spawn just as many. It'll only spawn it once, though. We're going to take this top branch and connect it to constant spawn rate. We're going to take the bottom branch with the rate connected to the false and attach that to the count under single burst. So you should have something that looks like this. You should have two variables, two branches with loop and rate connected to both, and the spawn system with a constant spawn rate and single burst. Does anyone not have that? Okay, perfect. Okay, we're gonna start creating a vector 3 for the motion of the blood. We're gonna go into this plus, locate vector 3 at the very bottom, and rename it to blood velocity. We're going to open that drop down, set the X value to 0.5, the Y value to 0.5, and the Z value to 5. If I remember correctly, the Z is determining how far it'll shoot out, and the X and Y is more of the height and radius in which it spurts. You can play with this later on to get kind of the effect you like. We'll be messing with that a little bit during the burst. But most of these variables you can change along the way to what you like. As I said, we'll have plenty of time at the very end to kind of mess with this, kind of see what you want, what you like, and what you want to use. We're going to go ahead, collapse the blood velocity, and drag it into the window closer to the initialized particle block. And under this set velocity, random per component, we're going to take the blood velocity and connect it to the B option. Yes. I'm trying to remember. Hold on. I think they're pretty much the same. We're just going to be setting different values for it. Like we'll be changing, I'm trying to figure out how to explain this.
This is per random, so are those like ranges of values there?
Yeah, so we're going to be setting them rather than letting them be random, which will also be variables we connect through here. So rather than it just being set in here how far and how wide it spawns, we're going to be setting an A and B. No, we're going to be changing that. It'll be like your blood splatters will go from 1 to 5, but it'll be random somewhere in there, and you'll have like 20 of them, and it'll calculate all there for you. We're going to open the 2 drop downs for this blood velocity. If it's just collapsed like this, double click it and make sure this drop down's open, as well as open the drop down for A. So you should have something, hopefully that's big enough. That looks like this for now. We are going to drag off of this X a little bit more towards the top and search for negate. And it should be a negative X in parentheses next to it. This turns the 0.5 to a negative value, so we don't have to keep changing that. Already does it for us. And we're going to connect this to the AX input. We're going to drag off of the Y, search for multiply, and change this B value to 0.2. And connect that to the A's Y value. This means it's doing 20% of the original value preset in Y. And we're going to do the same thing for Z. You can copy and paste this multiply float, connect the Z to the A input, and then this output to the Z. So it should all line up X to X under A, Y to Y, Z to Z. Now to make it look a little bit more realistic, we're going to be adding gravity. So we're going to move down to this output particle quad. And I'm trying to figure out where it's supposed to go. Make a little bit of room by grabbing this and pulling it down. We're then going to go back up to this update particle, select the block as a whole so it should be highlighted in blue, press spacebar, and search for gravity. And as you can tell, it already fills in the Y with the gravity value. Don't need to touch anything of that for now. We're going to scroll back up to this initialized particle and change, yes. I selected the update particle, press space, and searched for gravity. Is everyone's particles, you can see them in the window? Okay, because I'm kind of going blind right now. Don't know why it's not working. We're going to go back up to this initialized particle and change its capacity to 1,000. Now, it should be looking somewhat like a blood spurt for now. We still got more to change, but we're going to leave this. Make sure to save. You do not want your Unity crashing. I've had that happen too many times. Again, as you save, it should be showing changes, even more so. So just another reason to save. Motivates you to look at it, but also make sure your work is saved. We're going to go back to this project window, go to Assets, and create a new folder, and rename it to Shader. This will just hold the Unity shader. It keeps it separate from your VFX. It's more organization. We're going to do something similar to how we created the visual effects graph. Right click, create, find the shader graph, not the shader, shader graph, and find the blank shader graph. And you're going to rename that to blood shader. Let me show you the path. Create shader graph, blank shader graph. We're going to open this by double clicking it. We're going to take this window and dock it right next to our VFX blood and save it. This is where you can deal with more of like the visuals of the objects. You don't have to use it in here, like our meteor rain. I'll show you how you can do that just in the visual graph. This one's, it just adds a little bit more depth, a little bit more color, a little bit more visuals, if you want to go that route. We are going to go over to this little window on the right, the graph inspector. Under the active targets, press plus, and we're going to select visual effect. So you should have a visual effect that appears under there now. We're going to turn on this check for alpha clipping. So you should notice it in your little window. It adds the fourth item in your main window. You want to keep that. I'm going to move this because we don't really need that anymore. It takes up a little bit of the window screen. In this main window, we're going to press space, and we aren't going to search anything. We're going to go to this procedural drop down, find the noise, select that drop down, and select this gradient noise. This one is just the one that looks best for the blood effect. You can experiment here with what you want, but it should show this little funky looking thing. Little black and white. We're going to go up to the blood shader. This is where you can add variables just like the VFX graph. We're going to press the plus and add a new float. This one we're going to rename to blood scale. Okay. We're going to take this out and connect it to the base color under fragment. So you should have a little connection. We're going to be adding a lot more. You're going to move this and change this. For now, this is fine. There's just going to be a little bit more in there, just to give you a heads up. We're going to select this blood scale. Go to the graph inspector. You can turn it on and off through this little button in the top right. It should open this little window. And we're going to change the default value to 7. We're then going to drag blood scale into the main window. And right where under gradient noise it shows scale 1, we're going to connect it to that. Press save, because we're going to pop over back to the visual effects graph. We're going to go down to the output particle quad. And this is where we're going to connect our shader graph. You should be able to press that little bullseye. I don't think I saved mine. I think my computer might be. I think I'm just overloading my computer right now is the problem. Because I've never run this much. Okay. Okay, now to get back to the window. What did I do? There we go. Okay. Now hopefully it should show up for me as this blood shader. You should have this option. If it's not there, save it. That is your issue, just like it was for me. You can try and force it by pressing, holy cow, this save asset. That's what worked for me. Sometimes you might just need to wait a little bit if it's overloading your computer. This is how you connect the shader graph to your visual effects graph to make those visual changes, and it should show up as blood shader. Make sure to save that. Then we're gonna pop back over to the blood shader now that it's connected. We're gonna go over to this blood scale in the graph inspector. Change this reference from the underscore in the front to the underscore in the back. This is just the naming reference that works the best that I've seen. I'm sure that the underscore in the front would work just fine. I just don't want to lead you astray in case any of that goes wrong. The name and the reference should look exactly the same. The reference should just have an underscore behind it. That's how it should look. We're going to go back to this blood shader, press the plus, and add a new color variable. And just leave it as color. Select it. And in this graph inspector, go to mode and change it to HDR. We're going to open up the default and make sure that this is RBG 0 to 225. Mine was preset on HSV yesterday, so I'm just making sure that it is this one for you, just because we're going to set specific colors, or relatively specific colors. We're then going to set the color, go to R, 135. G and B are going to be the value 9. And we're going to make sure that alpha is at 255. So it's fully there. It's not transparent at all. This is to make sure we get that blood red color. And we're going to close that. That's all that we need from that one. We're going to drag the color into the window and drag off the color node and search multiply. You'll see B and A. You want A. The difference between this is where it connects it to the node, like color 4 into A4 versus color 4 into B4. It just prevents you from adding another connection. Multiply A instead of multiply B. Multiply A. It should look like, I'll do it again. If you drag off, it should be this multiply A. Okay. This is where we're going to move it around a little bit. You might need to make more space in your window. You can select multiple blocks by clicking, highlighting it all, and moving it. We're going to move this multiply up by gradient and the color above it, just so it looks a little bit more organized. We're going to switch this gradient out into B, and then take this out 4 and replace the base color node. It should then automatically delete that other connection it had previously. So your window should look a little bit like this, a little bit. It should look exactly like this. Okay. Everyone caught up? Does anyone need more time? Raise your hand. Okay. Maybe. I didn't have this issue yesterday. It doesn't even give me that option. That might be it. I'm not entirely sure. Okay. Because I used the exact same one as yesterday. I don't know why it's doing that. Because it should already be preset. I've never had this issue. And of course, when I'm teaching. Yeah. That must be the problem. That's what I'm gonna guess. Down here? Oh, I see, I see.
Just get a bunch of extra.
Rendering? Not render texture.
Did you get like a bunch of extra ones, Michael?
Render. At the very bottom, of course. Environment. That I might have not I might have built it in 3D if I didn't realize. Like I didn't select it if I was looking at the other one. I think I might have. It's okay. I have the other one working, so I can show that one. That is why I built it freehand. Okay. Is anyone still working? Okay.
I think you should ask. I did.
I can also.
Yeah, you can continue the lesson. I will.
And this will all get posted too.
Again, I'm just going to make it for me. Because the other thing too is I don't have it in the application. I have downloaded the book, but it won't show up here.
Make sure it's set.
What have you done? That's a good video game and you ruined it. I know you did too.
Oh my god, I did send that to you.
This is a good video game and you ruined it. You ruined it.
You like it.
Again, I'm just.
Yeah, because it's funny.
Yeah. It is really fun.
You're not really.
I knew that would be
Silly.
totally fine.
Is anyone else having issues?
Yeah. I'm working with those two.
It's so, I bet it's so
That
expensive.
is,
I hate when Instagram does that, by the way, with PC armors on it. Oh, I guarantee that's like $500. Exactly. Minimum. But it's so. Minimum? Listen, I would pay $500 for that, and that's why I feel like it's probably more. Oh, I guarantee it's probably more. It would be $500 minimum.
Playmail is so expensive
If
right
it was
now.
made, it's
It makes me so
definitely
sad.
then probably like.
When I'm seriously looking
Like,
to buy
it's
Playmail,
not
and it's just like
handmade.
$5 grand.
I know, I really want to make. Well, let's see, they have a Nancy character as Osborne. I've been wanting this. Oh, wait.
I own a sword on the fence, just like my forefathers. I
I own
actually
a sword because swords are cool.
That's why I get that focus bigger boxer so it's in the Their bullets will not stop.
I'm gonna go buy that, the long dagger.
It was so. I'm so mad that that guy, there was like a pirate guy who came up right after us and took it.
It was so.
It was so cool.
If there was anything that was like worth it, it's definitely.
I was honestly just enamored by the hammer working.
This is, it's not pulling up a full picture. And I have it on our actual website, but this is the wig that I want, and it's $300. Yeah. Also, this guy sells it like, that's my D&D character, and it's like, I mean, for the chess pieces though, like, the shape is so really well, like, what I'm saying is like, you can buy it, and I want it. And there's like,
What's your D&D character?
oh, she's a divination wizard. If you know, like, I'm guessing you guys know Norse things, the Welva. That's what she's based off of. The Welva. They're like soothsayers, priestesses, that sort of vibe. I got to write how the world ends. I mean, are you shocked? I got to write the apocalypse. It's so fun. That's really cool. Yes, we have an entire in the description. board with D&D because we play in person, but we have Discord to organize everything. There's a new entire like grouping of channels that's just gonna be for Legend Wars. There's gonna be about 12 more added to this. We haven't.
Is it gonna be one of those situations where it's like we're stupid props and then they know the props, so they want to create some props?
Not entirely. A lot of things are already set in stone because this is just like there's all of this that's all lore. There's I kind of go off. This is the Google Doc.
I
5
think I made it.
pages, complete with pronunciation guide because I looked at my DM and I said, I'm sorry, I'm using Icelandic and you can't stop me.
Hey, I would not be able to pronounce them normally, so that's a good.
Between me using Icelandic and also like Gaelic and all of those languages, I know how to speak. So sorry.
The same.
It worked last night.
Okay.
At like 2 in the morning.
Thanks.
So great.
Okay.
Hey, yeah. Me doing some stuff for Aaron's class, checking my spelling later. I'm like, oh, I was not spelling things right.
That's true.
That would be good.
Now I have my.
I haven't changed
Yeah, I was gonna say, just.
What?
I haven't changed the regular
I
sheet.
had another thing.
There's a way to do that.
This is fair.
It's
Fair. This was I heard about
we'll get it up. We'll get it up on Canvas.
Just because it sounds like Lucas is having the same issue with a couple of the issues we're running into. Just because that is a working prototype, if they want to
Draw your.
break it apart and whatnot.
So we're gonna keep moving on. I know that a few of you are running into some problems. And then we're going to bless you twice. We're going to upload files later so you can have access to those and download these versions later. So.
I have a working prototype of everything we're going over, so if something's not working, don't stress about it. You'll be able to download it, mess with it however you want. Following along, it'll just be nice to kind of see how it breaks down and all of that. If your particles aren't rendering, like I've noticed or come across a couple, I think I had this issue when I was switching between different versions. I didn't reselect my SRP, and instead I built it in a 3D environment. It's saying I don't even have a universal render pipeline, not even giving me that option. It's just because of the file I built it in. Everything else should still be the same if you're running into that issue. It should just be how you built it. Everyone good to continue on? Okay. We're gonna go to our blood shader. Make sure both are saved. You can see, oh God, I'm gonna have to force save it. We're gonna go back to the blood shader. You can make sure both are saved by no longer seeing the asterisk to the right of both of them in the tabs. I don't know why that changed. In this blood shader, we're gonna move the gradient noise and blood scale again by highlighting it and moving it left. We're gonna be dragging out of this out one in just to the open window and search for clamp. And we're gonna select the in one. We don't want the min, max, or saturate. We want clamp in one. There we go. Make sure the X is from 0 in the min and the X is 1 in max. Okay. And because it's squished, we're going to be adding more. Again, move it left. Move it as far as you want. At this point, we're going to be adding so much. Not a whole lot, but we're going to drag out of this out one into the main window again and search for power and have it the A1. That'll be how it connects to the node. So you should have a ton of these gradient looking things. next to each other. Okay. We're going to go back. We're going to create another variable before we do anything else. Into the plus. It's going to be a float. And we're going to rename it to blood dissolve power. It's nerve-wracking making sure I can spell everything correctly in front of the class. Gosh. Just another thing we're going to check. We're going to select it, go into the graph inspector, do the same naming convention, delete the underscore from the front of it, and put it at the back. We're going to do this a couple times just to make sure it references it properly. Go. Okay. Then where this default is, change it to 7. And then we're going to move the power out a little bit to the left. We're going to drag the blood dissolve power in between the clamp and power and connect it to the B input. Notice how it took a lot of the white away? That's going to be kind of the look of blood. We're going to then take the out and connect it to the B of multiply. So it should then delete the previous connection it just had. But all of your nodes should be connected. Make sure you don't have a loose node. So right now, it's a little big. You should have a gradient noise, a clamp, a power, a multiply connected to the fragment that was already in there. You should have a color connected to the multiply A, a blood dissolve connected to the power B, and a blood scale connected to the gradient noise scale. Does anyone not have that? Perfect. We're going to move on. So right now your blood should be looking like square panels. We don't want that. That's not how blood functions. So we're going to be creating a mask so it doesn't look like a square. So what we're going to do is right above all of this, we're going to click in the main window, press spacebar, and search for polar coordinates. It should be under UV. Okay. And then it should look like this really cool, colorful little thing. Okay, we're going to scroll into this one. Off of out 2, we're going to drag into the main window and search for split. It should be under channel split in 1. It's the only one I have. It should be the only one you have. Which should give you R, G, B, and A outputs. Off of R, we're going to drag into the world and look for 1 minus. And under range, it should be 1 minus in 1.
The word 1, not the number 1.
Yes, the word 1.
And that was R1?
Yes, that was off of R1. So this will give you that little circular blood type look rather than a square. We still got more to edit, but that's kind of the shape for now. Okay. We're going to need to start moving around a little bit more. Hold on. Off of this 1 minus, we're going to select out. Actually, I think you might be able to, yeah, and search for multiply. And do the multiply A. We're going to move this fragment and vertex over to the right a good chunk because we're going to be adding a couple more nodes in here. There should be. Okay. We're going to take this multiplying color and shift it over to the right as well with fragment. I'm going to move mine all a little bit more right more. And take this multiply out and connect it to the multiply B. Off of the power node that no longer has one connected, we're going to take the out into the main window and search for multiply again. And make sure it's connected to multiply B. Actually. Hold on, I'm trying to make sure I'm not leaving you astray. I'm missing a multiply. I'm trying to make sure. There's a couple multiplies. Don't do what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to make sure this is right. Or at least does it right. Power. See, the power's in the wrong place. That's not right.
Are we supposed to be in?
No, don't do this. My window's a little bit messed up from the slide. No, don't do it. Because this should be showing something. Hold on. I'm just gonna open up the other project and make sure. Not everyone. I forget I can do that. While I figure out this problem, we're going to take a 10-minute break. I'll figure this out, come back to you. We're probably going to put off the meteor shower till whenever you want to learn it. It'll be in the slides posted, but for now we're just going to focus on the rain effect. Be back.
I'm not sure one's gonna really cut it.
We're gonna do some gauze and duct tape.
It's gauze. It's the
It'll
duct
last
tape.
long enough to get to the hospital.
Be back at 10:50 and we'll go from there. Okay. I don't believe so, no. So if it's not functioning, that's okay. This is what it should look like.
Oh, by the way, Audrey, what the heck? I don't think I've seen your art. I had no idea.
Pause the yes for the
No, when I
Have
saw
you got
The 10-minute break. Totally forgot about that. That multiply out 4 value, that last multiply that we have, should be connected to the base color fragment. So overall, it looks something like this, which might be a little hard to see. Let me know if I need to scroll into anything. Delete one of them. That is in the wrong spot. Does anyone not have this? Perfect. Now to continue on. Make sure you move over this vertex and fragment a little bit more. We're going to be adding about 2 or 3 more blocks, nothing too big. We're going to go back to the variable creator block, press plus, and add a new float. We're going to name this erosion. We're going to do what we've been doing. Select erosion, go to the reference, make sure it has erosion with an underscore behind it, not in front of it. In this same inspector, we're going to go to mode, select the drop down, and press slider. This is going to give us options that we can select from the variable once we drag it in the window. We're going to go ahead and grab this alpha that should be in the second place right now and pull it down under emission. So it should instead be the third placement. Take the erosion variable we just created and drag it into the window, and then connect erosion out to alpha 1. So you should have something that looks like this. Yes. Oh, did it not save? Oops, thank you. I'm having to force save it. This is what I'm doing. Okay, so in between these 2 multipliers, the only 2 you should have, we're going to drag off of this out 1 to below everything else, unclick, and search for 1 minus. You should still maintain that other connection. It should be 2 out of there. You want both. We're going to take this 1 minus out 1 node and connect it to the alpha clip threshold. So the block should look a little something like this. Your multiply should have 2, 1 connected to multiply, the other connected to 1 minus. The multiply should be connected to the base color, and the 1 minus should be connected to the alpha clip threshold. Okay, make sure to save this, because we're going to go back over to the VFX graph. right here, should be where your erosion, under the output particle quad, where you connected your blood shader previously, this new erosion should appear as a slider. As you move it and say it, it should change your in-scene particles from 0 to 1. That should be the values. As you can tell, it does so much for my particles. So what we want to do next is to create some randomness for this blood. So we're going to stay in the VFX graph. Make sure you're saving as you go along. You don't want any of this. You don't want to be losing any of this. We're going to move the output particle a little bit to the right, but still in view. In this open space, we're going to press space and search for random number. It should be the only one, depending on how many letters you type. Double click it and change the minimum value to 2 and the max to 4. We're going to connect this R output to blood scale. That way, instead of a set default of 7, it's constantly changing from a random number anywhere from 2 to 4. Save this, because we're popping back over to the shader. We're going to go just to the left of the gradient noise, left of everything it should be. In the open space, you're going to press spacebar and look for tiling and offset. It should be a UV under UV. Double click it, and we're going to connect this, the out 2 off of tiling offset, into the scale. It should remove the blood scale 1. Essentially what this does at this point is it takes different sizes of blood, it takes that gradient pattern and selects random parts of it, so it's not taking the same random picture. So you truly do get that randomness in the blood. Yeah. What we're going to do now is add another variable. We're going to add a float and rename it to blood offset. This should be pretty much the final touches on the shader graph. We're going to go into the inspector, same naming conventions, go into the reference, make sure the blood offset matches the blood offset from the name to the reference, but put an underscore after the reference. And save that. We're going to go back over to this tiling and offset, scroll in, drag the blood offset variable we just created into the window to the left of the tiling and offset, connect that blood offset 1 output, and drag it into the tiling offset 2 input. That's a lot of words, holy cow. So you should have this. You should have your blood offset variable. You should have it dragged into the window, connected, and have it renamed. Save it, and that should be all that we do to touch this. We're going to go back to the VFX graph. And our blood offset, we're going to add, that should be a drop down. We're going to drag off of this, that should be, hold on. Are you guys seeing a drop down under blood offset on yours? Is there? That's what I'm seeing. I'm trying to figure out where. That's it. Oh. No, that's right. I messed up here. Go back to your lead shader. This tiling and offset, I told you wrong, needs to be connected to the UV2 input. And the blood scale should still be connected to this scale. Go back to your shader graph. The tiling and offset, instead of being connected to scale, needs to be connected to UV. You should have this connection right here, out 2 to UV2. This scale should be connected to the blood scale variable. I deleted the wrong thing. That was my bad. Save this. I'm not even going to say that. I don't know if I messed up anywhere else. Go back to the VFX graph blood. I still don't know what it is. So that should be a drop down. Reference default, because it should have an X and Y. You know what I think it's supposed to be. Don't do what I'm doing right now. I'm just trying to see if it's something else. If I accidentally told you to create the wrong variable. Because then that should be an X and a Y. Yeah. And a Z. Okay. We created one too many floats. Again, my bad. Go back to your blood shader. The blood offset you have created, select that, delete it. It's not supposed to be a float. It's supposed to be a vector 3. So what we're going to do is press that plus again, create a vector 3. It should be named blood offset. Same thing as before. Make sure that blood offset reference is the same as the name before, just with an underscore afterwards. So it should look something like this. Blood offset variable in the graph inspector, it's renamed. This one should show an X, Y, and Z, not just an X. That's where I went wrong. Make sure you replace that blood offset variable, it should look like this, into this offset 2 on the tiling and offset, just to make sure you have that connection after deleting that other variable. Once you go back to the VFX graph, now you have a drop down. That's where I went wrong. Off of this X, we're going to be dragging backwards into the open window and search for random number. Okay. We're going to leave them in a 0, change the max to 2. To change, we're going to move on to changing the size of the randomness a little bit more. So what we're going to do is scroll down just a little bit. You might need to open your window or scroll out of your windows just so you can see everything. Select this size over life It's just going to allow us to add a block to this whole thing. Press spacebar and search for output. Oh, sorry. Set size. I read the wrong thing. It should just be set size. Not by speed, not over life, just regular set size. You'll need to click on, you can really click on any of these blocks. You just need to click on one of them to add it to this certain block. Set size. Everyone have that? And just make sure that this block sits above set size over life. You can just drag and drop it by grabbing it, moving it. You'll see that orange line to indicate where it is. And make sure it's under orient face camera plane. We're going to have this set size selected. Make sure that block is blue. Go to the inspector window and change random from off to uniform. Going to go back to the VFX graph. You should now have an A and B value. Set A to 0.6 and B to 1. Okay. We're then going to select the block right under it, set size over life, go to the inspector, and change the composition from overwrite to multiply. If we leave it as overwrite, it's going to overwrite all of our previous values, thus not changing anything. So we want it to multiply. We're going to go back to the VFX graph and go down. So it should now say multiply size over life. We're going to select this graph and have a curve that goes from 1 to 0. You might need to add this second node. You can just do it by double clicking, and there should be this little gray line that you can change what it looks like and move it wherever you want. But something relatively like this doesn't have to be exact. So long as it goes from 1 to 0 and has a slight curve is fine. We're going to exit out of that. It should save. You should now have a graph that goes from the top left to the bottom right. With this one selected, the multiply size over life, again, you can have any of them selected. It doesn't matter. We're just adding another block. We're going to press spacebar and add a set scale. It should be this top one, set scale. We don't need it by speed or over life, just this plain old set scale. Double click it, and it should be set scale XYZ. We're going to change the X to 0.5 and the Y to 2. Make sure you're saving it along the way. We're going to select this set size random. Just by selecting a certain block, you can determine where it spawns, so it'll spawn like above this one. We're going to press space again and look for orient along velocity. So it should look something like that. This way it's going to stretch with the force rather than just by the look of the camera. You should then have 2 orients. It should look, your output particle quad should look like this right now. Something similar to this. 2 orient blocks, a set size, a multiply size, a set scale, and then a set color overlay. We're almost done. Just hang in there with me. as you can see here, unlike my particles, your particles should be right now splattering out something along this look. Besides this ground collision. We don't have that in right now. Unless you've messed with different values, different colors, that's totally fine. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine, or even how you did the graph. Different values will produce different things. If you want, we can go over these collisions with the ground. I have it in the slideshow. If you just want to mess with the blood right now, that's totally fine too. Raise your hand if you want to go over the ground collisions. Okay. For those that don't want to, you don't have to pay attention to this anymore. You can just mess with your blood. I'll be going over how to do the ground collisions so you get this little blood splatter effect. Otherwise, feel free to mess with it however you want. Change the color, make it look like acid, do a bright green, make it look like water splatters by doing a blue. Change with the size, the randomness, do whatever you want with that. As for the blood collision, it doesn't take too much more to replicate that. Let me go back to my project. We're going to go up to this update particles, and with gravity selected, we're going to press the space bar and add collision. Oh, hold on. It should be collide with plane is what you want. That's how you're going to add a collision with the blood. And if I remember correctly, once you add that, it should start to look like your blood is bouncing off the ground. At this stage, you can also change at what point your plane moves, or like how high or how long you want your blood to fall. Essentially, you get to control the lifetime of the blood here as well. That's just a fun little nifty trick. I'm trying to figure out where that was. Hold on. I have my values set somewhere, I just don't know where they are. Okay. There's somewhere in here I changed it. I don't think I ever did. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to go into this bounce value and change it to 0.5. This is kind of where you control that bounce effect of the blood. You can change it to whatever you'd like. It doesn't entirely matter. I'm setting mine to 0.5. Obviously, you can't see my effect. Change it to how you'd like. We're going to change the friction value to 0.2. And make sure you're saving it along the way, just as a reminder. Lifetime loss, you want to change it from 0, this slider, to 1. That'll make sure your blood stops bouncing. It should just die off now. As you might notice, like mine, it's overlapping. with the output particle quad, you can just drag it down because we're going to add a couple more. What we're going to do here is go down to this output particle quad, select, oh, wrong one. Stay in this update particle, select gravity, press space, and search for trigger on die. Double click it, make sure it's there. Now we're going to go to the right of this system in the main view. Press spacebar. We're going to go under System. And this will give you a whole lot of other preset systems like this one as a whole. So you don't have to recreate this on your own. And we're going to select Simple Heads and Spark System. So you should see this whole thing that just appeared. You don't need these three. You can highlight these, delete them. Select this other one, move it closer just so it's a little easier to see. Make sure the head of this, which is the GPU event, is relatively close to the on-trigger die we just created. There is an event node here that we need to connect. It'll just be easier for viewing. We're going to take that output event from the trigger event on die, connect it to the GPU event. Now we're going to deal with this right one. How these systems work, which if you take a look at the meteor rain, as you probably saw at the beginning of class, there was like 5 of these events. They all control different aspects. This left one controls the blood spurt. This right one is going to control the blood landing on the ground. You can name these by highlighting all of it, right-clicking, and selecting this group selection. It'll provide you a little name up here. When you click it, double-click it, I don't know why it goes significantly smaller, but it does. But you can rename it however you want. And then it'll go back big again. And you can drag it, again, organize it however you like, what makes most sense to you. How do you what? I didn't hear that question. Okay. Okay. Okay, what we're going to do is select this output particle quad on the right system, the blood collision system we just created, and delete it. The nice thing is we've already preset one that we have been working on all along that we can just copy and paste over. We're going to do that by selecting all of them, Control C, and then Control V under it. Move it where it need be, and connect the output particle quad above, back up to the update particle. So you should have this connection. Now we're moving on to the last of it. We deleted the existing output particle quad and copied the one over from the first system we had with the random numbers, all the preset colors, the graph and whatnot. We're going to go up to the top by the GPU event and initialized particle. And we're going to delete the inherit source velocity. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to Also of this add position, under the same initialized particle, and under update particle, we're going to delete turbulence. This is just getting rid of stuff we don't want for our blood collisions. We don't want the movement, we don't want any of that. We just want it to lay flat on the ground and stretch and dissolve and whatnot. So you should have just taken away a lot of this system. We're going to go under this output particle quad and delete both orient blocks. We don't need either of them. We just don't need velocity with the blood. Now we want to change the orientation of the blood to make sure it's flat on the ground. We're going to go up to the initialized particle. Select one of the blocks, doesn't matter, we're just adding a block to this system. Press space and add a set angle. Just the regular set angle, we don't need it by anything. We're going to change the X to 90 and leave Y and Z as 0. That's just changing the orientation with X to lay parallel with the ground. Now we want to get rid of the stretch that the blood is creating. So we're going to go back under the output particle quad and delete this set scale XYZ. We're going to go into this graph under multiply size over life. And this is going to look like a little funky. We're going to press this flat line. We're going to move the value at 1 at the very beginning. If it'll, here we go. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Down to about 0.5. You're going to add another node to the graph. Put it back up at 1. Oh God, I just created them. Relatively close to the first node and change this gray line to be flat. So your graph should look something like this. It should go up pretty quick and then flatline. It's okay if it's not exact. Something similar to that is totally fine. We've only got 5 more steps. If you hang on, we're almost there. We should finish just in time. We're going to go to the set size random block that we created. We're going to change A to 0.2 and B to 0.5. Under these 2 random nodes, just in the open space, we're going to press space and search for a sample curve. We're going to select this and you just want a 1 to 0, but make your 1 a little bit under 1. If you have it at 1, you will notice your particles are pretty black. If you do it a little under 1, it'll keep that red value, but it'll remove all of that black. So a little under 1, but just from 1 to 0. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. Then that should get you your blood look back again. We're going to exit out of that. You're going to take this sample curve, connect the S output to the erosion under output particle quad. Off of the time, you're going to drag to the left and add an age over lifetime, 0, 1. And then for the last step, oh, we already did it. Just making sure you delete that orient face camera plane. This should give you the blood splatter effect that you see here, where you have it spurting out with collisions on the ground at different random velocities and whatnot. To create the blood burst, all you have to do is drag your prefab, your VFX prefab, into your window, go to the inspector, with it selected, and turn off this loop. Notice how it goes once. Every time I save it, or it should, if you play it, it should only spurt out once. And that's how you get your blood burst for an enemy. Again, we will be uploading this, so if yours isn't working or having issues, you will have access to this. You don't have to recreate it. But then you can mess with the velocity. Like for the Z, you can change it to 40. And once you play that, it should squirt a lot further. You can change the radius of X to 5, the Y to 5, so it's a different height. If you press play again, it changes. So if you really want something gory, you can totally mess with that. You can go back into your shader and change that color that we set. Say, for goodness sakes, we want bright blue. It should change. But yeah, you could, like, that's how you create blood. The other one that I've done is this meteor rain, as I showed you at the very beginning. This one I just preset the trails. My own, they have a front spark system, as you can see at the bottom, where it kind of explodes with the ground. Does very similar with the blood. It adds a collision on plane. Has two different systems for the trails. Has that back end, how you see that black and like dark red, versus the front bright yellow and orange. Those are two systems. Again, we use that preset system and just manipulate it from there. You'll start to recognize if you go through that second meteor rain tutorial or even mess with the one that I'm going to provide you guys. A lot of it's the same workflow. You'll notice it, all the same systems. This one I think has 5. There is a way that I wasn't able to get working. I think it just might be my computer or the 2022 that I used, but there is a way to create burn marks on the ground. So if you want something fun like that, it's just creating another system. I'll include that in the file if you want to figure out how to work that. Totally works for me. But even if you want to use the sparks for electrical wire, you can totally get rid of the meteor rain. Or if you want rain with little mist trails, you can have it set as white and have blue for the rain and make the droplets bigger. All up to you. But there's so much you can do with this. That being said, I know we're getting really close to the end of class. I have included in the slideshow, which will be provided to you, all of these different tutorials on all of these different types of effects. Lightning strikes, explosions, meteor rain, stylized smoke, different character level up designs. Oh God, I didn't realize it was on click. As well as a second page of vertical beams, sword slashes if you want something with your weapon. Most of these are between 15 and 20 minutes, all by the same creator. As I've gone through a lot of his videos. He does really well at explaining piece by piece. Some instances, you will notice a block of his is different, mostly because if you use updated versions, there is a way to solve that. You just have to figure out what block to substitute instead. I found solutions for all of those little issues. Something to keep in mind. Assuming the requirements are still the same with your 3D, because I did a VR game. I don't know if this has changed. As far as I know, this is still the same. You need to have some sort of special effect in your game. Whether you create that now, start thinking about it now, totally fine. If you bring it from your boss fight to your individual game, that totally works. Even if you take 15 minutes to mess with something, like a particle effect for fireflies, It took me maybe 10 minutes because I just wanted to be done with it. It is a requirement. Just start thinking about it now. You don't have to include it in anything you do this semester. But as far as I know, Dodie will require it and expect to see it. But just so you know and aren't blindsided about that later if you haven't seen this. But that's it for today. Thank you for following along. Thank you for being a part of this struggle. That was a mess.
Don't be a